Thank you for joining me on the Goddess Talks.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone who is watching now, will watch in a little while, or will watch later. This will be posted on my Instagram page for always, and will live on my YouTube page as well, and then it'll be available for you, Sharon, to share on your Instagram page or Facebook page or wherever you share the things.
Yes.
Um,
Is this
and
also on
so
my, is this like live on my page too?
it is. It should be live on your
Cool.
feed as well. It should say that we're live together. Yeah,
Perfect. I just
it
wanted to
should.
be sure.
And sometimes it's hard. People like tune in and tune out, and then, like I said, I post it, and then people will watch like later
Yeah.
as well. And it just all depends. It's so we record it, and then I'll cut out some of the stuff in the beginning. So that's usually how I go about doing it. But as I said, welcome to the Goddess Talks. Today I have my mentor, my former instructor at Southwest Institute of Healing Art, my business coach, and now my friend Sharon Rose with me today. So welcome. I'm so honored to have you and all of your wisdom and Zen and all of the things that you bring to the world. I'm just so grateful you're here. And so thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Tuna also wants,
Hi, Tuna.
do you want to
I'm
say
really
hi? He's
excited that
also
you're
very
joining.
happy to be
Cats
here.
are always welcome, Tuna. Always. Cats are welcomed into these lives. Cats are, boy or girl, I think are the goddess incarnated in so many ways. And he's
I
just such
believe
a pretty
it.
baby.
He's just so happy. He's purring so much right now. He doesn't look like it, but he's very
He's a
happy.
beautiful baby. Mine pop in sometimes. They pop in and out. I have a cat door in my bedroom because I'm extra like that. Because I don't like to sleep with my door open, but then I feel bad that they can't get in. So there's a cat door in my bedroom door so they can get in and out.
That's so smart. It's so smart.
I feel bad for them if they get sucked out. So again, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, everyone who's coming on now. Again, I'm just going to pin a little comment here, and then I'm just going to write, welcome, Sharon Rose,
Yeah, thank you for
so
having
people
me. I'm so
know
excited.
who we are speaking with. And we shall put that one there. So thank you. So I have many reasons I wanted to have you on the Goddess Talks. One of those reasons was that, hi, Anne, thank you for joining. One of those reasons is that you are one of the people who kind of talked to me about doing things like this. And so, a little bit of background. So how I guess how we met was that I went to Southwest Institute of Healing Arts, SWIHA. It's an actual place in Arizona, but they have online programs as well. And when it came time to do, so I studied integrated healing arts practitioner. I focused on spiritual and intuitive guidance. And when it came down to start doing the business class parts of it, which was towards the end, you were my instructor, and you were the one instructor that I had that had these really great like open forum nights where we can just come on and chat and talk. And there was a few times that you stayed after and were so kind as to talk to me and answer my 8,000,000 questions. And I just thought you were so amazing just from that. And then I remember, I'll never forget the advice you gave me when I said, I really just feel like I want to work with goddesses. I want to work with women. I don't feel called to work with men, but I'm just really worried that I'm cutting like so much of my client base out. And you're just like, but there's like 8 billion people on the planet and half of them are women. I think you'll be okay. You're like, I don't think you need to worry about that. And that was just, it was just such a, like a weight lifted that it gave me this permission. And then I finished at SWIHA in October of 2020, no, in April of 2021, so like a year ago. And I kind of waffled back and forth with the coaching, and I started working with the Modern Mystery School a little bit. And I kind of did think maybe I wouldn't just work with women, and I just kept coming back to the goddess, coming back to the goddess. And, it's something I think you and I have talked about a lot is that people don't always quite understand, but that the goddess will come in, different goddesses will come in, right? Like I had spoken that Athena is kind of always present with me, and you had mentioned Artemis is always present for you, but there's times where I was going through like this Aphrodite phase. Um, and then the same thing, like, right, like there were times I just was going through an Isis phase. And I think you had spoken about that as well. So one of the things we've shared is that connection to goddess, I think. But in addition to that, you've taught me all the things. So the way I ended up working with you as a business coach, which is amazing because it's something that you do, Biz Incubator. So awesome. Such an amazing program, such a great offering. You could offer it in person, you offer it online, one-to-one and group situations. Was that I think Sweeha had reached out to me and I said, well, I haven't started a business yet. And I said, I don't really know what to do. And they said, and I mentioned something about you. I said, the best instructor I had at Sweeha was Sharon Rose, and she taught me all these things. And they said, hey, get in touch. Why don't you get in touch with her? Talk to her and make her a mentor. And that's what I did. And so we started talking. And one of the things you shared with me, and this is what I'm hoping you'll talk about a little bit, is your story about how you were like working in corporate. And then, you moved on from that and but you kind of like kept that to yourself until you were able to bring back that corporate salary. So tell me, what were you doing when you were working in corporate?
Yeah, so I was in corporate hospitality, so that's what I went to undergrad for. That's what I did up until I was 25. I was working in hospitality, food and beverage management, working in fine dining hotels and restaurants in DC, until I was 25. And that's when I was like, oh, there's more to life than this. And it was because of yoga. Like yoga, I took one class, and in my very first yoga class, I'm in Shavasana, and like third eye opens and is like, you're going to teach yoga. And it took me several years before that happened. Because I was like, I was 23 when that happened, and it wouldn't be until I was 25 that I would get into yoga teacher training after moving across the country. And yeah, corporate I loved it. Because when I say corporate, like, also understand, like, food and beverage management was not sitting in an office, like, doing report. Like, I was on the floor. It was very actionable. I was in the kitchen. I was, working with people all the time behind the bar. It was an exciting career, and I loved it. It just wasn't for me anymore. And so I moved across the country, and I actually went back into hospitality when I moved from DC to Arizona. Thinking like I will take a lesser role at a smaller company that's more localized, that won't take up so much capacity in my life, right? Something that will give me more stability and give me more just time to like figure out who I am. And within 6 months, it was like, oh no, this is not it. Like, it's not a lesser role in hospitality. It's not hospitality. And that's when I went to Sweeha, and I enrolled in Sweeha in their advanced yoga teacher training program and integrated healing arts practitioner program. And that was in 2015. That was quite a few years ago. And yeah, I just remember I went from working in corporate to working at a front desk of a yoga studio and like a fitness studio. And I went from like close to 6 figures to close to like $12 an hour. And it was a big, scary move. But it was what I had to do. Like, I needed to do that. And I only did that for a little while before I ended up becoming a nanny full time while I was in school, because being a nanny it paid better and it was less stress. And I could go to work and leave work and then work on myself and do my schoolwork and things like that. But it was definitely like I went from this thing that I had always said I wanted to do, which was hospitality. Like, my dad was a chef. I was very much like following in his footsteps in a lot of ways. And then I decided I'm going to leave that whole career behind, leave my degree. I still use my degrees. That's the funny part, because I definitely still do event planning and a lot of like food and beverage-esque type work within the like wellness environment, which is cool, but segue. But talk more on that later. I basically went to yoga school and was like, I'm going to start over and I'm going to do this. And it was hard because there was a lot of people who, I'm very lucky. I had a very supportive family, but I was very fearful of like telling people exactly what I was doing, because it's like I was leaving this very wonderful career to pursue something completely unknown and completely like out of the wheelhouse of anything that anyone in my family had ever done before, and really in my friends group or like anyone. So I did keep a lot of it to myself until I started really gaining momentum. And at that point, I didn't even have to like explain it to people because it was just showing. And like, I remember the first time I went home with like an oracle deck and tarot cards, and like amongst the years, it's so funny to like look back and see the progression of like the curiosity.
Oh no, you've frozen.
Oh no.
You're
No,
back. You're back.
Okay, you didn't freeze. I didn't freeze. I didn't even notice.
Oh, okay. So you're saying you were going home and like over the years, has it become the norm now? Like, oh,
Oh yeah. And like
yeah.
now it's so funny because like I remember one time I went home for Christmas, and this was years ago, and my aunt was like, come upstairs, I gotta show you something. And she pulls out her tarot deck from like the 70s and is like, we
Oh,
used
that's
to do
cool.
all this stuff too. She's like, but you know, life gets in the way. And I was like, yeah, it was like, we really are like, we're not the first generation. We are not just, this stuff is not new. It's been renewed a lot through women of our age, and it's become the mainstream.
Yeah.
It's become more of a grounded lifestyle and a way for
Mm-hmm.
us to actually create culture and society within the world, as the normal, like as like, yeah, well, being well before like you go out into the world is important. So it's like we're focusing on that, like you be well first so that you can go out into the world and be well and do well in whatever it is that you're doing. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. So yeah, I didn't share. It just gradually happened. Like I remember when I first left, it was like, you're leaving your career and you're going to be a yoga teacher. And I was like, yeah, that's right. And it was like, I was like the shiny unicorn sheep. I was never really the black sheep. I was the shiny unicorn sheep, but I didn't accept myself as that for a very long time. So it was really more of like me learning to love and accept myself in a way and like be okay with it. And then also them like being like, oh, maybe it's not like it is witchcraft, but like it's not.
Right. So I've said this before to other people as well, and it's like I'm so I don't want to be envious because I honor like what everybody's path is and what everybody's timeline is, and I honor, but like I think it's a lot of I wish that I had learned all of this sooner, right? And I don't think that had I 23, 25, like I don't think I could have done these things at that age, but it's you get it in your head where I just turned 40 in February, and I'm like, oh, but I'm 40, and it's like this is like a later start, and there's people who are so much younger than me who are doing these things that they've gotten so much further. But then I think of myself at that age and think, well, would it have landed? Was I open to that? Was it something that, and I suppose there's a reason, right, that you come into it at certain times and in certain ways, and I believe that that's really true, but I do still say, that I feel that there's a blessing in that it came to you earlier because you just have longer to do the work. And it also maybe came to you at a time where you had a little bit more freedom, I think, to do the work. Whereas like right now, I have two children. I had two children when I started doing the work. I was married when I started doing the work. And when you do it when you're a little younger, I think there's a little bit more freedom in that, you maybe can take a lesser paying job because you can, like there's some freedom in that, but then there's the lessons, and like there's a reason you come into things at certain times, I think. But prior to doing this, and had there ever been like when you were in college, when you were a teenager, is this something you leaned towards, or was it like you never took a yoga class before and you took a yoga class and that was it?
Yeah, so it's so interesting because I often like forget about my life like prior to being like in this yoga experience, like fully. And I often attest that to like when I started going to school at Sweeha, like that's when all this started. But I took my first yoga class when I was 19 in my hometown of Franklin Square, New York, and it was called Dawn Yoga. So it was Korean energy yoga. So it was very much based on energy work, and like we were not doing like traditional asana that like so many people consider yoga in the West. We were doing energy work, more Tai Chi, but it also wasn't Tai Chi. It was something different. And I was 19 and I honestly did it because my friend worked at this like little shop that was in the same complex and I had seen it and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I'm going to go check that out. And like, I remember we would go in and we would take off our shoes and we would drink rice tea. And then we would go into the room and we would do our energy work. And then we would come out and we would drink rice tea and we would chat. And then we would all leave for the night. And I did that like 2 or 3 times a week. And like, I honestly forget about that sometimes. Like, I forget that I did start when I was younger. And you know, I just wanted to do it. I don't know why I started doing things and like why that started happening. But I just did it because that's what I was just called to and like interested in. But you know, what's interesting is that even when I was younger, like I made a promise to myself that I would not bring children into this world or get married until like, I would never be unsure that it was a yes. Like it would always be like a very confident yes. And that I wouldn't bring children into the world until I knew that I could support them in whatever way, financially, mentally, spiritually, all of the ways that I could give them like as best of an upbringing that I could. And I will tell you, even now, like I'm not in that place yet, which is why I don't have children yet. And like I have a wonderful partner and like we talk about these things, but like, again, like neither of us are necessarily ready for that. So because of that, we also very much like I have that time, like you were saying, to like do this type of work for myself and to work on myself and my spirit and like to ground myself in this, because when I do bring children into the world, like I want it to be very intentional and like from a place of like intention. That's it. It's just intention. Yeah.
Yeah, and I that's not to say that, you know, you can't do the work with children, you
Oh,
can't do the work while pregnant, you
that's gonna
can't
be a
do the
whole other
work
set of
and
work.
have children. You know, it's all, or you can never have children, right? And that's also another thing. You can choose to never have children and that's okay too. And all of those things are okay. And you know, that's something I've been focusing on a lot lately is that and I ask about when you were younger. So one of the things, you know, I personally have been thinking is I think of myself when I was 18, right? And I think like sometimes I feel like I a little bit let like my 18-year-old self down a little sometimes, because you think like when you're that age, you're like this big dreamer, right? And like everything is possible because you have, most of the time you're not really, there's nothing set. So anything that you think you want to do in life is all the things you want to do in life. And then, you know, life happens and, you know, there's a point where I think all of us hit like wherever we are, and it's very unusual. And why I think your story is really cool is actually because it did come to you younger. I think some of us, you know, I know for myself, you know, 5 years ago, there was a point where I woke up and I was like, well, this isn't, you know, I'm not unhappy. I love my children. But like not at all the plan, right? And I think it's about kind of getting out of who you think you should be and who you expected to be, and like embracing who you are and who you can become. And one of the reasons I say that is because you talk about the children thing. And I think that a lot of women also feel like that has to be part of who they are because it's just part of being a woman and that's what society says and all of that. And so I think it's really incredible that you have made an intention, that you made that intention at a really young age as well, but that intentionally the thought process behind it is that it has to be a very intentional choice for when you're ready to make that decision. And so, I mean, and you're still quite young, really. And you started working at the yoga studio, you went to Swiha, and you know, what came next? Because you have all the things now. You have you have the coaching thing, you have the business courses, you have a space now, which I don't think you had before. I think the soul space is a new thing for you. You have a podcast now. You've been an instructor at Swiha. You've taken on bigger roles at Swiha. So all of these things have happened. You know, how did that progression work?
I said yes. like truly, like I said yes. And I remember I showed up for being like, I left my career in hospitality and said, I'm going to be a yoga teacher. And I went to Sweetheart and I went there with the intention of changing my career and like, not just going to heal and not just going to like learn these cool things. Like I went to become a yoga teacher and make that my career. And so with my Capricorn moon and all of my Capricorn placements, I am very much rooted and grounded in being successful. And so that is the energy that I brought into being a student there. And I remember I went through my yoga teacher training program. And at this time, like, you know, you mentioned a lot about like the intention I set when I was younger, but like there's a whole backstory as to like my childhood that like made me set that intention and made me the person that I am today. And it's interesting because just one thing on the child, like I grew up thinking like, I want to be a mom and I can't wait to be a mom. And now after all of this work, I'm like, actually, I don't know that that was ever my thought or if that was put into me. And I truly question whether or not I ever will have children or if that is on that, like, if it happens, great, but it will be a very intentional choice that we make together. Where before it used to be this like ingrained, I have to be a mother, like that is what I'm here for. And now it's just like, maybe if it is aligned and it is right and that is where I am led and that is the path, and that feels so much better because there's so much more room and space for me to do these other things that I'm interested in doing. And so like all of this happened through me starting my business and like showing up at Sweetheart and saying yes. And so very much with like my path, it was just I graduated and I started managing this little yoga studio in Scottsdale. The owner was going out on maternity leave, so I started managing it for her and doing her marketing and stuff. I was still very connected with Sweetheart, with people who worked there or people who went there. I was also helping facilitate this weekly community event called Yoga and More in the Park that happens on Thursday nights, and that's been going on for so long. And like people come in and support, and then like we all flow in and out of that, which was very cool. And so I was just very much in the energy and bringing it. Like I am doing this for, like, I love it so much. So I was just very energized in it. And then there was a position open at Sweetheart in the admissions, and someone had like basically referred me and been like, oh, like Sharon would be really good for this. And I had reached out to Casey Miller, the owner of the school, and I was just like, hey, like, I'm just gonna, you know, she had asked me to teach a yoga class at the yoga studio, and I had to say no to it because it was like an 8 a.m. Sunday class. And I was like, oh, goodness, no. So I actually said no to something that was out of alignment with who I was before I then reached out and was like, hey, like, I'm seeking, because the woman was back from maternity leave. So then I was now seeking another position within the industry. And so I reached out to her and I was like, hey, like if there is anything available, like I'm very open to like being at Sweetheart and supporting and working there. And I got hired into admissions, and then just it continued to build from there. And it was very special. And I went in, I took the life coaching course there. So I always say this about like my journey is like, I went into yoga very traumatized, right? Because like I knew who I was. And then I had an experience when I was like 14 that like, that was the thing that like disconnected me from mind, body, and spirit. And that was when I was traumatized, and like when all of the veils and like the shadow really took control. And it like led, so like, I feel like because it happened at a time where I knew who I was, I wasn't like unaware, like I was entering high school. I had an idea, I had dreams, I had all of these things, and then they were all shattered because all of a sudden I went into survival mode, and I went into this like dark place of just like, you just have to like get through the day, like you just have to get, you know what I mean? And so that was a lot of my experience from like 14 until I really got into yoga in my early 20s. And then that's when the veils really started coming down, and I started seeing like, oh, okay, like there is another way. This isn't all it is. So I think that because it happened at a time when I was already conscious of who I wanted to be, that is part of why I was also able to like take big steps and like say yes to things, is because like I already had that awareness, where I feel like some people, if they don't know who they are at any point, then it's like very easy to get lost, which happens a lot when people are traumatized in childhood and things like that. And I'm blessed that like that really wasn't my experience. Like my stuff didn't start until high school.
I don't know that a lot of 14-year-olds really know who they are. I think that's actually pretty incredible that at that age you had a good sense of who you are. I think you might have it like a lot of kids have a sense of maybe who they'd like to be,
What they're
but
interested in. What they're
yeah,
interested in. because I do know, like, I know like a lot of my adult friends who are living their passion and going after their dreams. Like when I ask them when they started, they all say around 13, 14, 15 years old.
That's
And
interesting.
that's exactly when I shut myself down and was just like, my parents said, you go to work and you do this. And I just started listening and stopped listening to myself and stopped trusting myself and started just like going down the career path, because that was the path that would keep me safe. Right. Rather than,
Yeah.
so it
I
is
think
interesting.
we are dreamers when we're kids, right? I think that if I do think back, so the thing I go to all the time is, when I listen to my inner knowing and I think, God, what would I really want to do? It was always like a combination of writing and public speaking. Like that was just it. And writing, 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 that was always the thing. And, when I come back to it now, and then that became this thing where like, yeah, but that's unrealistic. And you don't do that for a living. And writers don't make money. And you have all these stories told to you. And I think it's a really susceptible age too, to a combination of you're entering high school so that people get in your head about like you have to start thinking about your future and what's practical. And then you start getting a lot of peer kind of not peer pressure so much as like societal and peer influence. And I always go back to, maybe that's the age. Like, who would we be if we didn't have some certain experiences? But I think we all have experiences, but who would we be if we didn't have the culture we were raised in, the society we were raised in, the families we were raised in? And that's not to say that the families weren't wonderful families, but they may have had very particular values or beliefs around money or beliefs around what a job is, and beliefs about career and beliefs around higher education and things like that, and what you get kind of pushed towards and what's practical and what's not practical and what's real and what's not real. And then you also have social stories like, well, women, like, what's wrong with you if you don't want to grow up and get married and have a child? Your life is unfulfilled if you don't want a child. You're 39 years old, you're 40 years old, you don't have a child. You must be devastated that you don't have, all of those sort of ideas that come up. And I think that a lot of what happens to us in our life becomes about what stories have been created for us and then what narrative we've created as a result of them. And so for you to be able to kind of reclaim that and not have to be 40 and reclaiming that is actually amazing, because and having a sense of who you are. I mean, I know you're saying like, I don't know, maybe I don't know that not any of, when I think back to my friends, when I think back to myself, I'm not sure if I knew who I was. I think I knew what I would have liked to grow up to be. I think I knew what sounded like a wonderful future when I was that age. But of course, all the things happened and all the different things happened. And I think I had a good sense of myself more at like 18, 19, 20. And then sort of, I'm not really sure what happened. I sort of had like I was very like free flowing and like wanted to travel the world and all the things. And that's when I say, I look back and I'm kind of like, well, what happened there? What did I do? And not what did I do, but like, how did that not happen? And it was kind of like, well, you're supposed to get a job after you graduate college. You're not supposed to go traipse around the world. You have to go pay back your student loans that you just took out for all these years. And so it's interesting that you were able to follow back to that path. But when you were 14 and you were saying you were younger, did you know like that you were this, that you had this, that you were, I don't want to say different, but that you were a light worker, that you were,
Oh God, no. And here's the thing is I don't identify as a light worker or a healer or any of these things. I truly don't. It does. I'm a person. I'm a human being, and that is it. And I believe that everyone has intuitional abilities, and the work I do mostly is simply creating safe and brave spaces for people to come into and explore themselves. Truly, like that is what it is. And that's what I've been doing with myself for all of these years, is just exploring myself to find out what is mine, what's not mine, what have I picked up along the way. And when I did that and I figured it out, it's like I truly did come right back to my 14-year-old self, which was I wanted to play music. I wanted to perform. You said all you did was write when you were growing up. All I did was play make-believe. Like I wanted to be an actress. Like that's all I ever wanted to do was act and be on stage and perform and do all. And it's like in this space now where like all of those intentions and I'm saying these things out loud. And so like the process is happening for these things to come true. And like
Right.
all of this work that I do as a coach, and truly it is something that I am good at. It is something that I love. It is my faith. Like the goddess is absolutely like my faith. And I have my altar and I sit and I meditate every day and I do all of my work, and I love reconnecting people to their intuition, that innate ability to trust themselves and to trust their own ability to make good decisions for themselves and to live in alignment so that they can manifest that. Like I'm a teacher. If nothing, like I am a teacher more than I am a light worker. I can
Right.
teach you the skills and the tools, and I can show you new perspectives and mindsets through questioning, through strategic questioning of what you're experiencing. And from that, expansion happens and growth happens.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I really do believe that we all have that opportunity and that possibility. And though it's a two-way street though, because while I can do all of that, it absolutely requires a person who wants to and is willing to do that deep kind of work. Because a lot of people, and I know for myself, there's still, you know, we all have this. There's parts of ourselves we don't want to look at. There's our past
Right.
experiences we don't want to look at. And yet the more willing I was and am to look into my past, the more present I became. And I'm in a place now after all of these years where like I'm whole. And now I'm not just saying I am whole in affirmations. I mean, I am whole. I have integrated the pieces of myself to bring me here. And I say it, I am healed. I am not healing. I am healed. I have done the work to vibrate out of my system, out of my energetic field, that trauma that happened to me when I was 13, 14 years old. And grateful for the time in solitude over these past couple of years to truly integrate. Because what happened is like we unbecome, like we talk about this all the time. Healing is the unbecoming of everything that you were, everything that's happened to you, so you can become that pure bliss and joy of just pure beingness. But what happened for me is in that, and yes, like, and what happened for me in that place is I got really fucking bored. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse, but
No.
I got,
Yeah, absolutely.
all of a sudden I'm just here and I'm like, okay, so I now have all of this. It's mine. It's my energy. Like, what do I choose to do with it? What is the intention that I choose to use it for? And so when I started like tapping into that, what did I do? I went to grad school because I'm like, let me learn. And I went to grad school for women's spirituality, gender, and social justice. And I got a wonderful education. I took a break because it is very intense and it is a lot of work. And it wasn't it was in alignment for me, and then it wasn't. And so I chose to take that program for now. You know, who knows what the future holds. But I learned so much, and all of that information that I learned fundamentally changed a lot of my beliefs and who I am at the core. And I take that back. It did not change my beliefs. It added to my beliefs. It showed me a wider perspective of my beliefs, because it took my spiritual beliefs and it grounded them in the reality of the lived world that we actually experience. And when that happened, it was just like my heart expanded so much bigger than it ever possibly could have. I learned so much. I connected with new people, with new types of people. I intentionally started putting myself out there in situations that I hadn't experienced before so that I could learn more about the world that we actually live in and how it works. Not how we want it to work, but how it actually is working at the current moment. Because in order for us to get to a type of world that we want to be living in, we need to acknowledge where we're at so we can make those shifts and change. Like we can't pretend that just by like meditating on the future world we want to live on, it's gonna happen. Like it takes action, and it takes action in the reality of the systems that we work in now. And so it's been this long process. But this feeling of being whole and here and complete, it's like, oh, I can do anything now. Like I am this limitless potential, and I get to create the container for that limitless potential.